David, can you join the team and just listen if we're like the current meeting?
Hello. Actually, where are the speakers?
That's that if you will listen.
Sorry, I'll mute mine.
Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. That's good.
Thanks.
Hello, Craig. We'll just give it another 2 or 3 minutes then. Just wait for everyone to hop online. So,
I hope most of the people are joined. So I welcome you all on behalf of School of Science for our new seminar series for this semester. So for today's seminar, we have a guest speaker, Dr. Oliver from School of Science at Cybersecurity Research Institute. So I will give a brief introduction about Dr. Oliver and what he's doing and what his research profile around cybersecurity and human psychology. So Dr. Oliver Guidiati is a postdoctoral research fellow working with Cybersecurity Research Cooperative and the Edinburgh University School of Arts and Humanities Experimental Psychology Unit. Dr. Oliver's PhD was industry placed with Western Australia Department of the Premier and Cabinet. He has worked closely with Office of Digital Government, DGov, to develop a cognitive system known as the Western Australian Cyber Defence Task that assesses the capacity of network security analysts to sustain human attention. Oliver is an applied multidisciplinary scientist with active research contributions in cybersecurity, human factors, using neurosciences and psychophysiological methods. Oliver's other areas of research include functional layer infrared spectroscopy, non-invasive brain stimulation, machine learning, network security, and command and control console systems. So now I hand over to you, Dr. Oliver.
thank you, Ahmed. So welcome everyone to my talk today. We're just going to pull up the PowerPoint and then we'll get started. So my project really looked at, oh, pardon me. Hang on, I've got a technical.
Maybe share the screen.
Sorry, we need to share our screen in order for you to see that PowerPoint. No, it's the second option. No. No, still not us. No.
That's the one.
No. Go share. Go that one, and then go this page. Share. And then go back down here. There we go, guys. Are you able to see our PowerPoint?
Can you see our PowerPoint?
Can see.
Awesome, thanks guys. So, sorry, as I was mentioning, my name is Dr. Oliver Guidetti, and I'm just going to give you a bit of a brief rundown today of the project that I spent my PhD years working on. So it's the Cerebral Haemodynamics of something called Vigilance Decrement, and it's endemic in network security. Let's go here. So the mind that operates your security systems, there's really three components to network defense. You've got hardware, you've got software, but you've also got the brain of the human operator and their attention system that's required to sustain processing of all of that information and action, again, will take reasonable actions against security problems and threats. So it's easy to update hardware and software. You have to wait around 900 million years to 1 billion years for the brain to naturally select an upgrade for the human mind. So oops, it's gone ahead somehow. There we go. So it's best to actually have a working understanding of what the human attention system is struggling with and what it's able to do in these environments, in these very task-specific environments. So the phenomenon, next one. So the phenomenon itself that I investigated was called Vigilance Decrement. So intrusion detection systems, these are cybersecurity command and control consoles that network defense analysts use, are bottlenecked by the human attention system. They can really only sustain processing of information on these complex systems for around about 20 minutes at a time before a destabilization occurs inside of the human attention system, and that's when you see something called vigilance decrement. Lapses in attention begin to cascade and snowball out of control after that point. Next slide, please. So vigilance decrement isn't only seen in cybersecurity. It's really been formally known about since the war. In cognitively demanding tasks that are repetitive and monotonous and require processing a large volume of information. Cyber's a bit worse because it's not just the volume of information that makes it hard to pay attention, but also the complexity of information. So the effect is caused by cognitive elements of the task itself that leads to a dysregulation of the nutrients over the human attention system. So you see on the right there's a brain, and the yellow component just on the very tip there, that's your anterior frontal lobe. That's the part of your brain that actually controls where your attention is. It's actually both the left and the right, but the right-hand side is the part that does all of the computation. The left-hand side is a mild difference, but for all intents and purposes, it's the right side that we're talking about today. Sorry, this PowerPoint is going crazy on us. So the purpose of the PhD was to investigate what cognitive elements of software design actually impact processing in that brain region. Next slide, please. And how does it affect it? So the problem that I cottoned onto early in the lit review phase was that sustaining attention to network defense software, it can't be maintained 100% for more than 20 minutes before you start to see that cascading of problems. The cause is actually, it comes down to three elements of software design. Signal salience, or how obvious the threat is. The event rate, how quickly an analyst has to process information, particularly in a DDoS situation where they're being overwhelmed quite quickly. And cognitive load, the complexity of the computation that they actually have to go through in order to understand what type of threat it is, what kind of problem it is, and what a solution process is to be followed. So my approach to solving this particular issue was to take it back to the brain, to look at what is actually happening at the site of the neocortex. Now for that, I needed a way to stimulate the cognitive environment that network defense analysts perform in. I needed a test bed, which is what our next slide will show you. So this slide is a picture of the West Australian cyber defense task. This is a vigilance task. It's a simulated environment that allows an experimenter to compose differences in those cognitive elements of design that influence vigilance decrement. So we have the left, center, and right screen subtasks. They're based on different forms of tasks that an analyst would actually fulfill in their day-to-day duties. On the left is just a simple arbitrary signal discrimination task. The center task is what it more closely resembles an analyst console in an IDS or a scene. And on the right we have a, what's this one? This is a anomaly detection subtask. So for example, so each one of these columns lines up from level 1 at the top to level 5 down the bottom. A top priority alert is something that is far more urgent, a corporate privacy violation, for example. And a level 5 is something like monotonous noise traffic. Now you'll notice that there are 2 top priority alerts in that level 1 category. And if we look down towards the bottom, of those 2 columns, there's one that's sending through a large volume of noise information. So between those 2 top priority alerts, you actually get to see a bit more of the context, the tactic of what an attacker is possibly doing in this environment. On the left, you've got 2 top priority alerts, but not a lot of noise coming from someone. On the right, you've got the same number of top priority alerts, but with a lot more obfuscation going on. There's a lot more noise in the system. So the point is really to, as accurately as possible, replicate what the task is that network defense analysts actually have to contend with. Next slide, please. So this is where the brain comes into it. The small device you see on the left there, that's a wearable brain scanner. That's a functional near-infrared spectroscope. All it does is it shines light in through your skull and it refracts back out again, and it performs a series of computations to work out how much oxygen is being metabolized over that exact site. It's a way of working out how much fuel is being pumped by that specific part of the brain. You get an idea for the cognitive load over that direct site. So the basis of this of the experiment was essentially to compare 2 different compositions of this WACDT. Version 1, call that a dynamic condition. Version 2 is a static condition. I'll explain what that means in a moment. And then to measure the cognitive load under each of those circumstances, to show that when those elements of design differ, you get different performances. Next slide, please. So this slide might be a bit tricky to fandangle, but we'll try our best. So the brain, just for some background, it has 2 essential fuel sources that it accesses for different reasons. So it has glucose and it has glycogen. Glucose is the primary sugar that is delivered to the brain by blood. Now, under normal circumstances, the glucose in that blood gets stored as glycogen. Glycogen is just the package state of what glucose is. Now, when your brain is operating at a lower level of intensity, it's not thinking that hard. If you could just click the left image for me, we see this sort of behavior. Is it going to work? So yeah, there we go. At lower levels of activity, I think you paused it. At lower levels of activity, the brain's just going to use what's coming in through the blood. It doesn't need to access what it's stored separately in its spare fuel tank as glycogen. Glycogen really is to be thought of much more as a spare fuel tank, or maybe even more like nitrous oxide in a drag race car. So the brain will maintain that sort of very slow, lower level of behavior. But then during if the complexity of a task jumps and the brain has to work a lot harder to perform a given task, it can then access that spare fuel tank. So if you just click that next one for me, please. I'm not sure why the animations are going as slow as they are. So the brain bumps its ability in terms of how quickly those neurons are firing. It's still accessing that blood, but it drains that spare fuel tank of glucose. And it takes quite a while to recover that. Now, once you've used all that up within 5-15 minutes, well, then your brain has to, its activity has to drop back down to what is just being delivered by blood alone. So you've wasted the spare fuel tank. So that is the basis of what what we hypothesized was causing those lapses in vigilance in network defense analysts. They've used up that spare fuel tank, and within 20 minutes they start to make increasing compounding errors. Next slide, please. So that's the biology of what is effectively going on here. So as I mentioned briefly earlier, there were 2 different versions of that IDS task that we tested: a static and a dynamic task. So the static condition of the WACDT, that's meant to simulate a busy but stable period of work. Things are much more monotonous in the static task. Whereas in the dynamic task, it's designed to simulate a transition, say from a quiet to a busy period. Things get harder to do when things begin to ramp up. Think more along the lines of like a DDoS attack, when everything's coming in at once. And essentially both of these are realistic, valid scenarios that a SOC could encounter. But what we wanted to look at was, between these 2 risk profiles, what's the impact of that on your brain as you're working? Next slide, please. So this is what we found. So I'll walk you through these 2 graphs. So they're performance curves. On the right we have performance curves. Now, in both graphs, red corresponds to the static type of task, and blue corresponds to the dynamic type of task. And what we find is that there are characteristic indicators of whether or not someone's improving, getting worse at sustaining attention to an IDS, and it's based purely on how those cognitive elements, signal salience, event rate, and cognitive load, based purely on that, we see these drastic differences in are they getting better or are they getting worse over time. What you see on the left here is what we recorded using that apnea spectroscope over their anterior frontal lobe. So during the dynamic task, where things are shifting, we see it peak, drop, and increase to a point above where it initially jumped up to. And this is across a 60-minute interval, but that initial drop, it's around about 5 to 15 minutes, just below that 20 that we mentioned earlier. Now that corresponds to performance decline. Whereas with this red task, and admittedly this data is a bit noisy, but it jumps, dips, but then it continues to dip. So these are two very different characteristic neural signatures of performance improvement and performance decline. Next slide, please. Now there are actually reasons for each and every one of those data points. I'm not going to go through all of this. Obviously, it would take too long. But in effect, there are really good reasons as to why each one of those things happens. And the long story short of it is, once you've drained that glucose reserve, they're held in cells called astrocytes. So you have your neural network, and sort of placed on top of that is a network of fat cells called astrocytes, and that's where we store the glucose. Well, once you've drained all that glucose, it's only drawing on blood. Well, the amount of sugar that's in blood is also finite. That's why we have to, maintain nutrition and keep eating. A sugar crash, this is effectively that. When the brain starts to draw more and more and more sugar out of the blood, from there, we start to see this cascading problem where it's just drawing more blood in to the brain, but the amount of sugar isn't there, so it has to draw more blood in, so there's less sugar, it has to draw more blood in, and it just rinses and repeats. Next slide, please. Now this is the static task. This is where we saw performance improvement. Now, what I suspect has happened here is it's not gone up and increased again. There's no overload. There's no compensation effect that's going on because it hasn't drained the glucose from its reserves. It's certainly spiked because it's activated some of those reserves, sort of like a signal dampener, but it hasn't overloaded it. So you don't see that same overcompensating effect by drawing away from more blood. Next, please. So what actually explains this result? So I mentioned just a moment ago that you've got your neural network and you've got that layer of fat cells on top of it. And that layer of fat cells is what holds that spare fuel reserve. Well, if you can think of network defenses involving two sets of neural circuitry. Oh, is that me or you?
Yeah.
So you have task-relevant neural circuits and task-irrelevant neural circuits. Now these are quite fiddly and complicated diagrams, but the point is the same. So we have a network of task-relevant neurons linked to an astrocyte, task-irrelevant neurons. These are also linked to astrocytes, but they're not going to draw on it. The reason that the task-irrelevant ones don't draw on it is because they're not overloaded. They're not the part of the brain that the analyst is currently using to perform their task. So the problem actually really begins to spread after that 20-minute time point, like this. One neuron begins to completely drain its reserve of astrocyte up here. That then spreads across the entire rest of the circuit until that entire region of the brain that you're using to maintain attention to security threats in your scene, until it's all depleted. So it also explains why it's quite a gradual cascade of problems. Next slide, please. So this slide is here to effectively demonstrate exactly what I just meant. So let's have a look at performance. What happens when performance is improving? Where things are kept static and constant, but but the amount of blood drawn just continues to decline. It means that this task that you see up here in yellow is not overloading the total amount of spare energy coming from that astrocyte. Because it doesn't overload it, there's no additional pull on reserve on sugars from blood. Whereas, and that's why performance improves over time, that's alone. Whereas in performance decline over time, it does overload that astrocyte. And then after it overloads this first one, it spreads out to the rest of the task-relevant neurons. So over time, it has to draw more and more sugar from blood, and more sugar from blood, and more sugar from blood, until you've ended up hypoglycemic, and you now need to have a jelly bean. Next slide, please. So what are the potential applications of this work? Well, it could be used to produce an anonymized team-based summary of behavioral and psychophysiological capacities of a SOC team, so that you can customize the actual software that you're looking at to match what is neurologically handleable by the team as well, because these are also individual differences as well. What person A might be able to sustain for half an hour, another person might only be able to sustain for 15 minutes. This test at least gives you some perspective on how your SOC, how it's composed, how the software inside of it is affecting the team. So you can use that to effectively work the problem backwards. How do we design the SIEM so that its elements of software aren't as overloading? We can identify analysts who perform best under different cognitive loads or different conditions. So for example, there might be some members of the team who are better at dealing with the more static and constant forms of work. This is times when the SOC is quiet and something gets slipped through. But there might also be analysts who perform better under a crunch, but who get bored out of their mind when they're just simply waiting around when things are static. So you'll see worse performance in that operator during the static condition, but it allows you a bit more intelligence over what you're actually, over how, I don't know how to phrase it, over the team members you're selecting, given the context of the SOC. Oh, sorry, we've gone. There we go. It also gives you a capacity to test how analysts would actually handle different types of threats. So that center screen that you might remember from earlier, that long list of alerts, I only included about 5 common types of cyber threat in that. Things that were SSLBL blacklisted. But you could also include new 0 days that come out. So you could ask the question, even though my SOC analyst team are performing well, given a certain range of cyber threats that we may or may not be susceptible to, this new 0-day attack has just come out. Let's test how well the team is able to actually handle that, the occurrence of that issue, particularly with things like IoT devices, where vulnerabilities in IoT devices are going to be quite voluminous if you do get attacked in that way. You can also benchmark the cognitive compatibility of network defense software. So if you're a larger size business and you're looking to fit out a SOC with a certain kind of software, a certain kind of SIEM product, you could use this task as a way of measuring how it's been implemented. Does the way that this software has been implemented in my team match up with the team's neurology, with the individual's neurology? It would take a bit more work, but you could certainly do it. And the main takeaways. So there is a very real physiological link between the software that network defense analysts are using and their brains, and what their brains are actually able to handle. And it's not so much a matter of strength, effort, or capacity. Well, no, it is a matter of capacity. The capacity of those fat cells, what's inside of their blood. When we design new systems for security operators to use, considering the natural limitations of the human doesn't limit the SOC, it actually enhances the SOC, because you're not giving humans tools that they just can't handle for, across the duration of an 8-hour shift. AI will not solve it all. Certainly the more that you add AI to cybersecurity, you could automate a lot of the features of that task that you saw earlier. But that just means that this particular task, like many in psychology, will have to be updated. As products in cybersecurity, also, as they evolve, we also need to evolve new methods of understanding what the human limitation is, so that when they're implemented, those softwares can actually be used to greater effect. Remember, you can upgrade hardware and software, but it is much harder to upgrade the brain. There are some methods of doing that using brain stimulation, but that's a fair way down the track. For now, it's better to actually look at the software that we're implementing and ask, how well does this actually match up with our analyst biology? That was my speech. Thank you so much for listening to me, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Oliver Guidetti. That's my QR code to my LinkedIn and my Orchid profile. Thank you so much. Do we have any questions? Yeah.
Is there a physiological correlation between the consumption of the glucose stores and age and or gender?
age is an interesting one. Yes, but only when you get to a point in life where you are starting to see other digestive problems. So if your body's ability to digest sugars is beginning to become impaired, perhaps if you're diabetic, for example, that's when you might see something. But I wouldn't say it's directly age-related as such. But there are other features beyond just glucose that'll affect it. Things like hydration, things like how many dark leafy greens that you've had in your diet, how much sun you've actually been exposed to. That's another thing as well. I won't go into the biology of why that matters, but it's a dopamine argument, and if you don't get sunlight, you don't get dopamine, you lose out on neural energy in the frontal cortex. So there are other factors. This was just the one I focused on. But that's a fantastic question.
And gender?
Gender, not as much, no. There are differences in... See, cyber's a very gendered environment to begin with, but insofar as this is concerned, no, there really is no reason that there's no reason to suspect there's a difference in sugar metabolization and glucose metabolization between men and women. But that is definitely a good question, though. Are there any further questions? No? I've answered everyone's questions. Is there anyone online?
So any questions from online participants?
Fantastic. I've satisfied everyone's curiosity. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. As I said, my name's Oliver Guidetti. If you have any other questions, feel free to contact me or come up and chat, and I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you very much. Cheers.